Bum ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. How you doing? It's BK from manpowerwars.com here on Tuesday, March 17th, 2020, 6:44 p.m. downtown Toronto, Canada. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And currently in the midst of a coronavirus pandemic, people acting sketchy, making each other uncomfortable, and running around shaking near hundreds of strangers a day, and making it hard to sort of socially distance and quell the pandemic. So just north of Yonge College right now, I'll take a little stroll down Yonge and show you that if men can help people stop acting rude and sketchy with each other and then running around shaking near strangers, then we could probably stop this pandemic fairly quickly, get back to more or less life as normal and good to go. If not, then people will just bother you, you'll have to bother them, and then when you can't pay attention to each other, you have to run around shaking near strangers, trying to force them to put up with you, and this pandemic sort of thing could drag on, you know, a long time. So there you go. So manpowerwars.com for more on that. Otherwise, we'll take a little stroll, and we'll see. And, you know, and men can stop it, so it's no big deal. Manpowerwars.com, I got tons of video over the last few years, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise, you know, it's tough because people, you know, can't explain why they're worked up, bothering you like a pretend grumpy, sketchy wife or girlfriend. You know, guys, girls, making everyone put up with and act like them. It's hard to put up with it impotently, them being a mess. You can't say or do anything, just right? And so you have to bother them back, and then when you bother them back, you can't pay attention to them, you have to look for other people nearby to bother. Then eventually you just wander around like a zombie, shaking near strangers, trying to force them to put up with you, right? So that's the issue. And so men can help people stop. Otherwise, you know, people get embarrassed and lie and argue and get upset and start crying, and you can't really do it. You just have to sort of put up with them bothering you, or yuck, that's kind of gross. You have to bother them back. And then they like, yeah, you make them say yuck and bother them back, work up, force them to put up with you. And then when you can't look at each other anymore, you wander around shaking near strangers, trying to force them to put up with you. And that only lengthens the coronavirus pandemic, based on sort of what we know. So here we are. This is north of Yonge College. This is Yonge Street right now. Streets are fairly quiet. But yeah, that's what happens. So everyone's on quarantine. Now, if people stop doing this with people they know, then they'd stop making each other uncomfortable and wandering around shaking near strangers. Then be a lot happier, be able to respect each other, communicate well about fun or serious stuff like this pandemic and what's the right response. And make sure the government goes far enough, but not too far. Takes away all our rights forever. Sticks us in pods like the Matrix while the rich people get the rest of the world. So, but yeah, if you can stop them from making each other uncomfortable than running around shaking near strangers, there's a chance you can stop the spread of the coronavirus Covid-19 pandemic. Otherwise, formerly world-famous, nice, polite Canadians, you know, men certainly, men you get all screwed up. Hey, I can't talk anymore. Look at me. Oh, you want to look at me? That's to look at. No one look. I'll force you to. It's kind of uncomfortable. Oh, you know, you forced me to. Yeah. Now we bother each other. Then we go bother strangers. Oh no. So that's basically what happened. I mean, that's how everyone sort of turned into the same zombie. With a virus going on, you know, running around shaking near strangers is probably not a good idea. You know, making people you know uncomfortable, bothering them until they have to bother you, and then it's hard to do anything with each other. Wandering around shaking near strangers is probably a bad idea. So, yeah, if men can help people stop, you know, then you can probably stop this pandemic fairly quickly. And if not, then it could just drag on and on and on because of all the people acting rude and sketchy with each other and then making each other uncomfortable, then wandering around shaking near strangers and running away. You know, bumping into you, rubbing up against you, forcing you to put up with them. You pretend grumpy wife or girlfriend, just busting your balls, make you feel impotent, uncomfortable. That's kind of gross. You've got to get worked up by them, force them to put up with you. And so that the pandemic could just go on and on and on for months and months and months. As long as instead of polite Canadians respect each other and acknowledge each other and agree not to bother each other and keep their distance, instead they get rude and sketchy, make people they know too uncomfortable to be nice, look at, or talk to, and then wander around shaking near hundreds of strangers a day. Thereby, if they are, say, a carrier of any sort of pathogen or whatever, they'll run it force close to you and get worked up, force you to put up with them, or they'll bump into you, rub up against you, and try and force you to look at them, spaz out, and so on. So that's the issue when it comes to what's going on. And it's been getting worse. Now, it's bad enough in good times. So everything's going on, the Raptors are playing, there's no pandemic, it's great. It still sucks when people work up bother you for no reason, make everyone quiet and uncomfortable. Nice, polite Canadians have to sneak around when they're not around and sneak away and try and be nice to you. Hey, we can look at each other without that person freaking out and worked up bothering us and making us all uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to sneak away from people getting too sketchy and see if you can still be nice to people normally, like, nice men and women, ladies and gents teaching kids to me. But otherwise, as sketchy people keep getting more worked up, especially men, big, strong, straight men, bully everyone into putting up with and acting like the exact same kind of pretend ugly girlfriend zombie. There's nothing to look at, no one to look. So there's nothing appropriate. Not like, well, I'm a sweet old lady. It's like, oh, I'm a hot young girl. It's like, there's nothing. It's just a dude. It's like, hey, there's nothing to see. Well, you're not going to look at it. You're not going to like it. Put up with me. You have to do it back because it's kind of gross to sort of be impotent while they're doing it to you. And that's how it makes everyone sort of the same zombies. And then they run around shaking near strangers. And during the coronavirus pandemic, it's a real issue. Now, I know since I was a kid, some poor sketchy person shaking near strangers, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to bother them back? No. You're supposed to bother other people? No. You just have a little self-respect, mind your business, politely ignore it. They'll finish running around shaking, and everybody feels better. You feel better, self-respect, mind your business, teach kids, don't be a mess. The person shaking near strangers feels better, they like being ignored, probably want to stop, instead of making you both feel bad, uncomfortable, or feeling guilty and embarrassed and lying and arguing and whatever. Everyone around relaxes and feels better. It's like, oh, it's nice, less bothering people, better than more, and you can all kind of collectively agree to politely ignore them while they run around shaking and run away, or maybe calm down and sit somewhere. And then people know it's safe to mind your business, or it's safe to be nice to you when they'll realize, oh, you're not worked up bothering people, bothering them back, putting up, running around, shaking near strangers. No, nothing like that. Oh, hey, how's it going? You can actually look at each other, talk to each other, respect each other, be nice and stuff. So that's the issue. So, but if you can stop it, people acting sketchy and bothering each other, they run around shaking near strangers, and you could possibly stop this COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic a little faster. It doesn't have to drag on to like, well, what happened? We were all socially distancing. No, you're not. You're running close to people, you're bumping into people, rubbing up against people, trying to force people to see you spaz out, look ugly, pretend grumpy, sketchy girlfriend. Put up with me. You're not going to like it. I know it. You're not going to like it. Put up with it anyway. Okay, now what? Now you don't want to do anything with me. I bothered you for no reason. Okay, run around, bother other people. And then run around shaking near strangers all the time. So they'll pass on, whatever if they have a virus or something, right? So that's a problem, right? When it comes to the coronavirus. In general, it's a problem for polite Canadians to do that, worked up, bother you for no reason, make it hard to say anything because they get embarrassed and lie and argue and feel guilty and scared and embarrassed, and they just get upset if they can't bother you and make you both uncomfortable. That's kind of gross. So you have to bother them back, and you have to make both of you uncomfortable. And then when you can't do anything with each other, you have to run around shaking near strangers and try to force them to put up with you, right? It's the same thing that you don't like them doing, they don't like you doing, and you can't look at each other anymore, can't pay attention when you're acting sketchy, then run around try to force strangers to put up with it. So that's the problem. And men can help people stop. It's no big deal. I got lots of proof, manpowers.com. It's no problem. Men are okay with it. Women, kids, security, cops, military, intelligence, police, politicians, media, civilians, patriots. It's all fine. No big deal. Or you really can't say anything because people get embarrassed and guilty and lie and argue and scared and upset, and they get cranky if they can't get worked up and bother you like a pretend grumpy wife or girlfriend is busting your balls, making you both feel impotent. You're like, I can't say or do anything. Nope, nothing. I'm a grown-ass man. I can't say or do anything. No, you know what you did. Pretend bitchy, sketchy, grumpy girlfriend. Put up with me. Work up, bother you. And most people out there, the average Canadian man or woman, they can't just be impotent while someone's bothering them, and they can't say or do anything. Someone's just a mess near them. So you have to be a mess back. You have to bother them back. And they go, hey, put up with me. Now you put up with me. And then they have to spin around in circles looking for other people to bother, and that leads to them running around shaking near strangers and running away, right? And so even in good times, as I said, it's bad, but especially with the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic, for people to bother each other, make each other uncomfortable, and run around shaking near strangers all the time is really bad, right? It's really bad for you, right? Now, if you're polite Canadians, hey, I got to go to work, I got to go here, I got things to do, people depend on me, no problem. They politely acknowledge each other like polite Canadians, keep safe distance. Hey, we're not going to bother each other. How's it going? Pretty crazy. Hey, sure is. Hey, have a good one. You too. No, but if they're like, no, put up with me, run close to you, you're not going to like it, force you to put up with me, bump into you, rub up against you, force you to put up with me, then that's no good, right? And especially when they're running and trying to force hundreds of strangers a day to put up with them. They're running shaking near hundreds of strangers a day. in general, it's a bad thing. It makes everyone quiet and uncomfortable. But during a coronavirus pandemic, it's even worse, where people worked up, bother you, force you to put up with them, run close to you. They know you're not going to like it, not going to like them, make it hard to be nice, look at, talk to people, and they just want to run around shaking near strangers. Now, if this is your wife or your girlfriend, and they're worked up and not explaining why, then you should figure out what's going on. You know, hey, honey, what's wrong, right? Come on, calm down. Can we talk about it later? There's people around. They'll make everyone uncomfortable. But it's just some random guy or girl, the kid doing it near someone. It doesn't make any sense. So you said, yeah, gross. Okay, I'll bother you back then. And then so you have to bother them back, and then you can't do it. And then you have to run around bother strangers. And that's how this sort of virus can drag on and on and on, you know, for months and months and months. What happened? Oh, people are rude and sketchy. They work out, bother you, force you to, you know, see them look ugly, make you uncomfortable, pretend grumpy old lady, your wife or girlfriend. And then you have to bother them back because it's kind of yuck. Who wants to see that? You know, you don't want to be forced to look at it, forced to put up with it. And then you can't respect you. You have to run around shaking near strangers, trying to force strangers. Oh, look at that nice person over there. Hey, I'll bother you. Hey, someone's eating a sandwich. Oh, bother them. Oh, look at that news person on them. Bother them. And so running around shaking near hundreds of strangers a day is a bad idea in general for polite Canadians to enjoy where they live and so on. But it's also even worse during a pandemic when you're trying to minimize the spread of a coronavirus or COVID-19 virus, and people are acting sketchy, bothering each other, making each other uncomfortable, and then running around shaking near hundreds of polite Canadians a day, just going too close to you, getting worked up, bothering you. They know you're not going to like it. They're going to make you both uncomfortable. You know, it's hard to force, you know, people to see you look ugly and work up and bother them. You know, so you have to run close to them or bump into them or rub up against them or brush up against them. And, oh, I hope I can trick you into putting up with me, right? So it's bad in general. It's bad for Canadians to respect each other, polite Canadian ladies and gents, teach kids to be and communicate well. But it's even worse during a sort of a coronavirus pandemic when you see people sort of doing that. So hopefully people can stop with people they know. You know, when you're cooped up at home, go, hey, rude sketchy, put up with me. Hey, force you to see me play with my hair. Oh, touch my face. Oh, wipe my nose. It shoves thing in my mouth. Oh, wipe my nose. Look at my toes. Oh, I get worked up. Look at my body. Look at my butt. Look. And people don't just drive each other crazy at home, and then they can't wait to get out and run around and trying to force strangers to put up with it. Hopefully people can stop with people they know at home. And then they can kind of calm down when it comes to wandering around shaking near strangers, right? Generally, for a nicer place to live with nicer people instead of going to hell, but also specifically during a coronavirus pandemic, when you're supposed to, at best, be polite Canadians, acknowledge each other, agree not to bother each other, keep your distance and keep it moving, not run close to people, know they're not going to like it, force them to put up with you spazzing out, force them to see you look ugly, know they're not going to like it, bump into them, just try and desperately trick them into seeing something that you know they're not going to like, and then run away when it's hard to be near them anymore because you bothered them for no reason, and then run around shaking near hundreds of polite Canadians a day, right? It's hard to mitigate a pandemic spread when people are getting worked up and bothering you, running close to you, brushing up against you, bumping into you, rubbing against you, just to barely force you to see them get worked up and bother you and act rude and sketchy like some pretend grumpy, sketchy wife or girlfriend zombie. So that becomes a real issue, right? And it's tough, but men can stop it. It's no big deal. Men can help people stop it. It's fine. Otherwise you can't really say anything. People feel guilty and embarrassed and lie and argue and people don't like it. A lot of times when there's no one around doing that, worked up, bothering people for no reason, other people can sneak away and be nice to each other, right? I've met lots of polite Canadians where you're like, okay, that person's, we can't look at each other because now they're worked up and try and force someone to see them look ugly. But if they move, if they leave, if they go to that part of the store or whatever, then you can be like, oh, hey, how's it going? We can be nice and look at each other and relax and get along. And then as soon as you're looking at them, you're being nice, they get worked up, force you to put up with them again. Oh no! So you have to. You have to sneak around, right? Oh, it's tough. They'll run around shaking near hundreds of strangers a day, and if they have any sort of infection or disease or whatever, then they'll just run around shaking near hundreds of strangers a day and running away, and that's not a good thing to do in general for a nice place to live with nice people, but specifically in a COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, it's a bad idea. So it's good if you can help people stop running around shaking near strangers to mitigate that. You can go on for years. You say, what happened? Well, rub up against them and bump into them and try to force them to see, look at my body, look at my ass, let me get worked up, run away. This is You couldn't just politely acknowledge people and keep your distance and, hey, pretty crazy, isn't it? Yeah, sure is. Polite Canadian, how's it going? Agree not to bother each other. Oh, they bother everybody. It's not even. It's nothing. They run around shaking near everybody. Oh, men can help people stop. I don't want that to be a worry. I otherwise feel really bad. Otherwise, you can't say anything. People get embarrassed and lie and argue and get upset, start crying. Oh, so what if I bother people, make them uncomfortable, make them put up with me? Can't do anything else. Run around shaking near strangers. So it's like, whatever. You can't torture some poor son of a bitch or, I don't know, motherfucker or mother of children and say, you can't torture them and say, yeah, come on, you know. But, you know, it's good for people to know, right? That, you know, that you should try and help people stop acting sketchy, making people uncomfortable, you know, and then running around shaking near strangers, right? Because otherwise, you know, this thing could just drag on and on and on and on and on. So, you know how it is. Well, you can say what he's supposed to. You say, hey, man, you want to talk about this poor sketchy person shaking near strangers? Nobody ever does. Since I was a kid, you just politely ignore it. You don't bother them back. You don't bother other people. You just have a little self-respect. Don't be a mess for other people. And you feel better. They feel better. They like being ignored. Probably want to stop instead of shaking near everybody, making everybody uncomfortable. People around relax and feel better. But nobody's, hey, wonder why that poor sketchy person shaking near strangers and running away? No, you politely ignore it. So it used to be very rare. Mind you, it used to be one every few months you'd see in Toronto. A lot of peer pressure to be polite, even among mentally ill or homeless people or crazy people. But now it's just, whatever, put up with me. Oh, okay, put up with me. Oh, run away from each other, bother someone else. So it's hard, especially during a coronavirus or COVID-19 pandemic, when people act rude and sketchy, make you act rude and sketchy back. And it's hard to do anything else. They run around shaking near hundreds of polite Canadian strangers a day, just looking for people to bother. Just, oh, look at those people over there. Run close to them. Force them to put up with us. Oh, look at that. Look at that. These people seem to be getting along. They seem nice to each other. Zombie, bother them. Force them to put up with us. Hey, force them to see you spaz out. Look ugly. You know. So it becomes hard. Because then the pandemic could drag on for months and months and months. But what happened? Well, polite Canadians couldn't just politely acknowledge each other and say, hey, pretty crazy, isn't it? Yeah, have a good one. You too. And keep their distance and not bother people and make it easy to communicate well, so that we could save Canada and teach kids to, communicate well, like politely. Instead, you act rude, sketchy, bother people, make them act rude, sketchy, bother you back. Well, you can't look at each other anymore, run around, force strangers to put up with you, right? Oh, they don't care. Even if there's a pandemic and you're supposed to have social distance, they will still bother people till you bother them back and then run around shaking near hundreds of polite Canadians a day, no doubt. So that's the problem with the zombiosis if it gets bad enough. Even me personally, I didn't used to have it too close, sunglasses on, hold up a newspaper. Before, when people would act sketchy, hey, put up with me, you just look away. Everyone would look away. Just, ugh, gross. Why you make me put up? And then they'd stop. They get embarrassed and stop. But as it gets worse and worse and worse, it becomes all people do, and they do it. You have to do it back, and you can't look at each other. You have to bother somebody else, and you have to run around shaking near strangers. That's how bad it got. And now, even in the coronavirus pandemic, they're still running around shaking near strangers, trying to run close to you, force you to put up with them. No, you're not going to like it, not going to like them, make it hard to do anything else. And then they've got to run away and bother more people because it's hard to do anything else with them, right? So, but it used to be this bad. It used to be a small percentage of people, and people don't like it. People just kind of like, roll their eyes and smile. I'm glad that's gone. But then it keeps getting worse and worse and worse as people acting rude and sketchy work harder on making more rude and sketchy people instead of polite Canadians working on making polite Canadians. And that leads to where we are when it comes to this pandemic, which is even in a global pandemic where you're supposed to maintain social distance, there's still people acting rude and sketchy, forcing you to put up with them, making you act rude and sketchy back. And then when you can't do much with each other, running around shaking near hundreds of polite Canadians a day, or strangers, just try to bother them, right? So that's the issue. So and men can help people stop. It's no big deal. You can check out Manpower.com. Everyone's fine with it. No big deal. Who cares? Everyone's fine with it. Otherwise, you can't really say anything. People guilty and embarrassed and lie and argue and get upset and start crying. No, let me bother you. Like pretend grumpy wife, girlfriend, bust your balls, make us uncomfortable. Don't say anything. How dare you? You're just impotent. You're just a mess while I'm a mess near you. Booga, booga, booga. That's kind of gross. You have to bother them back. You can't just put up with that. And then when you bother each other and you can't do much, you've got to run around shaking near strangers and try to bother them and force them to put up with it, right? And that's the sort of mass zombiosis process, which makes it hard for people to respect each other and communicate well about fun or serious stuff. Plus, it makes it hard for people in a big city like Toronto to stop the coronavirus pandemic, even if it's a global pandemic, because they still want to run close to strangers and shake and try to force people to put up with them. So that could make it drag on for a lot longer than it needs to. Right? Well, they don't care. You can't say no. They will get worked up and bother you and force you to see them look ugly and make you both uncomfortable until you're like, yeah, this is gross. And you have to do it back. You have to bother them back. And then when you bother them back, they're like, yeah, this is gross. And you can't be nice and look at each other and talk to each other much anymore. Then have to run around trying to force strangers to put up with it. Right? Zombies aren't usually happy once they made you a zombie because they have to deal with another zombie. What are you supposed to do with a zombie? You bother them, they bother you. And they'll wander around, look for more people to bother. Right? And that makes it hard to end the sort of coronavirus global pandemic or COVID-19 pandemic or whatever, because people act rude and sketchy, make it hard to respect each other, communicate well, so we can't kind of pressure our politicians to come up with the best solutions. We can't inform and empower each other. And it makes it hard to stop the spread of the virus when people are acting rude and sketchy and making each other uncomfortable and then running around shaking near strangers and running away, right? So that makes it tough. They just want to trick or force you to see them look ugly and you get worked up and bother you and make you put up with them. It's not good, nice straight people, not nice gay, not trans, not ladies. It's something weird, something that some zombie sort of, some zombie brainwashing, some mass zombiosis. Doesn't make any sense. In part, it's because guys discouraged from talking. Oh, look at me. Hey, I force you to look at me. No one wants to look at me. There's nothing to look at. I'll force you to. Oh, no, yuck, yuck. Okay, I'll force you to look at me then. Put up with me. And then you make everyone put up with an act like, and then no one can, so it's not appropriate. Like, I mean, you can be inappropriate as a girl. You can switch something appropriate. But for regular straight guys, nothing appropriate. So that's how they kind of trick people into, you're going to hate this. I know you're going to hate this. No one likes this. Put up with it. Whoa. And you're like, okay, so am I supposed to be nice to you from now on? No. Okay, here, you put up with me. But, so then even perfectly nice guys and girls now just bust each other's balls and make each other uncomfortable and make it hard to do anything, then wander around shaking near strangers. And that makes it hard to stop the spread of a pandemic when you're, running close to people, bumping into them, rubbing up against them, trying to force or trick them to see you get worked up, look ugly, spaz out, and so on, right? So that's an issue. Well, this could go on for a lot. They're not going to stop. They don't care if there's a pandemic. Once they act sketchy and make everyone uncomfortable, then you can't respect them. You don't feel like being nice, looking at, talking to them much. That's all they got, is running around shaking near strangers and running away. That's why it's important for polite Canadians to help people stop if you can. And men can help people stop, obviously. Otherwise, people feel guilty, embarrassed, lie, argue, get upset, start crying. You can't really do much, right? These poor guys, poor girl, what's up? It bother you, make us uncomfortable. What's wrong with you? Let me bother you, make us uncomfortable. Oh, it's kind of yucky. You're going to bother me back? Because what else can you do? Yeah, okay, maybe. And they run away from each other, bother somebody else. So that makes it hard, right? So. So that this thing could drag on for months or years if people don't stop acting sketchy and then running around shaking near strangers. If they could just respect each other, communicate well, and keep their distance, could go a lot better. Anyway, so 7:07 p.m., Tuesday, March 17th, 2020. Happy St. Patrick's Day here at Yonge College, downtown Toronto, Canada. BK from manforwars.com. It's important. Might never be on the streets again. But if people stop acting rude and sketchy with people they know and then stop making each other uncomfortable, then wandering around shaking near strangers, there's a pretty good chance that we could stop this pandemic sooner than later. And if not, then there's a pretty good chance we can. And there you go. So if it's your wife or girlfriend and they're worked up and they're not explaining why and they're uncomfortable and some problem, then you figure out what's going on. You say, hey, what's wrong, honey? What's going on? Or you figure out, it's not mine. They just do that near everybody. That's what I'm saying. If you want to help people stop, you can stop the spread of the pandemic. Otherwise, they make everyone uncomfortable and then run around shaking near strangers. They'll bump into you, force you to put up with them, force you to see them look ugly, make you both uncomfortable. They'll do it all because it's hard to be near people and be nice and look at and talk to each other when you act like a pretend sketchy wife or girlfriend, busting someone's balls, make them put up with you, get worked up, bother them, right? So that could make this drag on forever. Again, if it's your wife or girlfriend worked up, not explaining why, you say what's wrong. You say stop, we're in public. Calm down, don't make everyone uncomfortable. But if not, it's just some random guy just doing that near people until you don't like him and you don't want to do anything with him, then running around doing it near other people, just shaking near strangers. That it doesn't make any sense, right? So, anyway, so that's what's going on. Here at Yonge College, it's after 7 p.m., Tuesday, March 19th. Again, it's not your wife or girlfriend. They just pretend to be your grumpy wife or girlfriend. They just want to get worked up, bother you, force you to see them look ugly, bust your balls, make you both uncomfortable. And then once you can't be near each other anymore comfortably, they run around shaking near strangers, right? And then they try and force strangers to put up with it. So, well, if it's your wife or girlfriend, you figure out why they're worked up. If they're not explaining it, you figure out. You ask them why, what's wrong, or what's going on, or calm down. We're in public. Otherwise, it don't make any sense. They run around shaking near strangers. Oh, it's hard in a pandemic. It's hard for a pandemic to stop. If people act rude and sketchy and bother people and make you both uncomfortable and then wander around shaking near strangers. So that makes it tough. Well, men can help people stop. Otherwise, you can't really say anything. People get upset, embarrassed, lie, and argue, start crying. And, yeah, kids, oh, what do you mean I can't bother you till we're both uncomfortable and then go bother strangers? Well, it's like, ah, never mind, forget it. It's nothing, it's okay. Don't bother me. Can't help it explain. No. Well, it's okay. A lot of people are going to be spending time at home. And so if they don't act rude and sketchy with each other at home, and then they stop, then they won't bother each other, make each other uncomfortable, then run around shaking near strangers. So, it could be some pros and pluses and minuses. Well, you don't have that many options. You can still try. You can still spend all day, even a global lockdown pandemic, bothering people and making them uncomfortable, then running around shaking near strangers, bumping into them, rubbing up against them, trying to trick or force them to see you look ugly or get worked up or whatever. Even though it's really uncomfortable, unpleasant, they're not going to like it. Just make it hard to do anything else. So, if it's your wife or your girlfriend, you figure out why they're worked up if they're not explaining. Otherwise, it don't make any sense. Nothing. It's okay. I've been there. What's wrong? What's going on? Okay, calm down. We'll talk about it later. I know. That sucks, but there's people around. Don't make everyone uncomfortable. Well, it doesn't make any sense. They just make everyone uncomfortable. They run around shaking near strangers. So, it's bad enough in the good times. It's bad enough in the good times. Everything's going well. Watch your Raptors. But during a pandemic, it's even worse. To act rude and sketchy, make people act rude and sketchy back, and then when it's hard to do anything, run around shaking near hundreds of strangers a day, instead of polite Canadians politely acknowledging each other and keeping their distance. Instead, they say, hey, you're not going to like this. I have to run close to you or rub against you, bump into you, force you to look at me, force you to see me spaz out. That could make the pandemic drag on for months and months and months and months and months and months and months. So, well, make it help people stop. He's no big deal. See, Manpower's that guy. He's fine with it. Otherwise, you can't say anything. People feel guilty and embarrassed and lie and argue and get upset and start crying. And, what do you mean I can't bother you like pretend grumpy girlfriend? Make us both uncomfortable. They run around shaking near strangers. Well, never mind. It's nothing. It's okay. Self-respect. Mind your business. You can't help it. Explain it. Well, it's your wife or girlfriend. You figure out why they're worked up not explaining. Well, it don't make any sense. That's why I walk around shaking near strangers. Well, it doesn't matter if there's a pandemic. You could die from the coronavirus. They run around shaking near hundreds of strangers a day. Rub up against you, bump into you, and force you to see them look ugly and make you uncomfortable. They don't care about anything. Well, if you don't respect people, people don't respect you. It's hard to do anything. So that's why you play Canadians to help people stop. Make it help people stop. Otherwise, that's about it. If people can't respect each other and communicate well, teach kids to do much. And then the pandemic, and you're like, hey, we should all respect each other, polite Canadians, acknowledge each other, keep our distance. Hell no, I act rude, sketchy, make people uncomfortable, run around, shake near strangers. Ha ha ha. It's like, well. So this thing could drag on and on and on for months or years and years. So what happened? You can just, politely acknowledge each other like polite Canadians and keep your distance? No. Act rude and sketchy, make people uncomfortable, make them act rude and sketchy with you. And then when it's hard to be near each other, just wander around, try and force strangers to put up with you and run around shaking near hundreds of strangers a day. Well, if you could stop it, if you could stop people from making each other uncomfortable, acting sketchy, and then run around shaking near strangers, then you could stop this pandemic maybe in a few weeks, no big deal. The people act rude and sketchy, make each other uncomfortable, and then wander around shaking near hundreds of strangers a day, just running close to them, bumping into them, rubbing up against them, trying to force you to put up with them, force you to see them get worked up, spaz out. This could drag on for months and months and months and months and months. So, anyway, it's all good. Make it help people stop. You can see manforce.com. It's no big deal. Everyone's fine with it. Otherwise, you can't really say anything. People get embarrassed and lie and argue and upset, start crying. Hey, you mean I can't be your grumpy girl?